or so that are in. So, and it's Monday. Usually it's, it takes a little bit for everybody to get going with the event. But by Friday is when, hardly anybody will be there. But it'll still be fun. And I do share these out, so yeah.
Got it. Okay.
All right. Do you want to, can you test your share on the bottom, sort of right next to chat, that box with the arrow?
I see it, the upward pointing arrow.
Yes, if you click on that and select slides, you should be able to see whether your slides were loaded.
All right, so it does say to view files already uploaded, ask the host to make you a speaker. So I am already a speaker, correct? Is that saying it?
Should be, yes. Okay, so role speaker, yeah.
And then I'm going to try it again.
Okay. Oh, yeah, people are still there.
They're saying good morning, guys.
How did what's it doing now? Is it going to share the slides?
Let's see.
Yeah, I have you as speaker. Make sure that.
Let me see. Do I need to refresh? Let's see. All right, so I did a little bit of a refresh.
Yeah, and it looks like I had to re-invite you to the stage.
You did, and
yeah.
Let's see. Okay. I can see the slides. It was there.
Again, oh, there it goes.
Okay.
There it is. Okay, great. And then you should see maybe, do you have the arrow and everything to navigate slides?
Yes, so here, I'm
there
back. Yep.
Excellent.
I have that.
Right.
So let me just jump over here. Can you hear that? Hopefully not. You can? All right, let me see if I can, I'm gonna put in my let me make sure. Can you hear me? It did, because I can hear you loud and clear. Yep, that's fine. Let's rock and roll. All right, let's go. Okay, no problem. Thank you, Louis. Hi, everybody. Good morning. I am joining you today from beautiful, sunny Montego Bay, Jamaica. And I would like to know where everyone is joining from. So if you would just go ahead and put your location in the chat so I can see that. I am hoping that we would have a very good discussion this morning. Madrid. Oh, wow. That's cool. Hi, Raymond. Let's see as they're coming in from Panama, currently in Chicago. All right, Kelly, I see you. Augusta, Georgia, Maryland. Hi, Devin. You can come. You can come. The airports are open. We have from Austin, Texas, Elena. Hi, Elena. Thank you for joining. Charlotte, North Carolina. We have California. We have Sweden. All right. Bordeaux. All right. Where is Bordeaux, Catherine? I don't think I've ever heard of that. Albuquerque, New Mexico. All right. Pennsylvania, Minnesota. Waldorf, Maryland. Oh, hi, Patrice. Oh, your mom-in-law is on her way to Jamaica. Cool. She made a great choice. Louisiana. Is that Catula, Georgia? Austin. Raymond says he'd like to be in Montego Bay. The airports are open, guys. You can come on over. It's a beautiful day here in sunny Montego Bay. All right, so I just wanted to have a conversation with you guys today, and you can keep plugging those locations in. I like to see where you're coming in from. Rona from Uganda. All right. Brooklyn is in the house. Montreal is in the house. Louisiana, Oregon. All right, we have a nice cross-section of folks here. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the day one of the conference. And welcome to the session that I'll be, going through with you today. I titled it L&D 2.0, the power of data-driven insights, because based on where my thinking was, it really was just about how we can evolve from learning and development as we are currently practicing to something that would provide more value to the businesses that we serve, right? And so today's presentation is going to be mainly surrounding that. I don't know about anyone else, but for me, I started in L&D quite some time back, maybe about 12 years ago. So I was fresh as a learning and development manager in a call center setting. I don't know how many people are familiar with call centers, but that's where I started my journey. And so I was responsible for developing training curriculum, onboarding, and so on. But I had a very interesting director. I'm going to say that because this is, I think, my first foray into data. And it was necessary for me to learn how to gather my numbers and how to really interpret those numbers, because he was the kind of leader who it would not be okay for me to just approach him and say, hey, I need your people to train, right? He tended to always want to ask those questions. Okay, thank you so much, Catherine. She says that's in France. Okay, we have France in the house, and we also have Lisbon. Good. Thank you so much for joining us, guys. Right, so let me continue my little story, right? And so because of him, I really would have to develop this skill, if you want to call it that, of being able to justify why I would want to pull, as he would call them, his people or employees into training. And so that's how I really got into looking at numbers related to learning and development and how that could help us design interventions for our learners, right? The businesses that we serve. However, I'm going to be honest in saying that initially I was a little bit intimidated because I was never a math person in school, right? Math was not my favorite subject. And so I had this thinking in my head that in order for me to be able to get into the whole idea of data and looking at, performance data, that I really would have to have some sort of great mathematical background. How many of us here feel that way today? But that's how I felt. Has anyone ever felt that way? Like, you know what, math is not my thing, numbers are not my thing, I do better with words, and so I just want to stick to the words and get it going. So that's how I felt. And I must say that I was a little bit intimidated at first, but once I got into it and recognized that it's not as scary, Danielle, yes, it's not as scary as I thought, and that it was helpful, actually way more than helpful. Thank you so much. Yes, it was helpful in helping me to design not just learning, but meaningful learning for our employees. And at the end of the day, for me, it's all about the businesses and the employees that we serve and what's going to work better for them. So I want to just go ahead and walk you through my presentation today and give you some of that information in terms of showing you what is data, what kinds of data, how to gather the data, and give you a case study and just some information to help you to see it from that perspective. And hopefully, if we do have persons here who are a little bit shy where numbers and data is concerned, that you would get over that and really be empowered to start looking for the data and trying to understand the data so that you can provide more value to your businesses or your clients. Do we have any questions so far? No? If not, so let's just go ahead and go into it. So what we're going to cover for today's agenda, guys, we're going to look at how L&D analytics emerged. I call it a historical review. We're going to look at what is L&D analytics, also how we gather the data, and looking specifically at some tech and some tools that I use as I gather the data for my learning interventions. Also how it is that we could help the clients that we serve and the companies that we serve to create what I like to call a data-driven culture. And also, what are some of the benefits of using L&D analytics? So just a quick overview here. I took it all the way back in time. We're stepping back, looking really at how L&D evolved from where we started, right? And if you follow the timeline closely, you'll see a couple of milestones that I wanted us to pay attention to. For example, the early intelligent tutoring system with Pressey, that was in the 1920s. So just kind of showing you how L&D and analytics evolved over the time. And please be aware that at the time these were being introduced, they were seen as groundbreaking technologies, right? I know a lot of us are concerned right now with AI, and it's causing a lot of us as L&D professionals to kind of figure out or to think about, the value that we deliver, what we can add to the conversation. And I did share some information with my followers on LinkedIn last week with regards to not being too intimidated by AI. The way I see it really is AI also takes information, or AI is being programmed by people, right? And so because of that, I'm not too intimidated in terms of what it can do, but I try to see how I can use what AI is able to do to better inform the interventions that I design, and to also offer more value to the companies, right? So we see that timeline moving now into the 1960s, where there was the introduction of computers in education, believe it or not. That was not a thing before that time. And then learning began to develop and grow as a science, as a field, right? And then they had the development of the first learning management system in the 1990s. And of course, as we hit the 2000s, and we're now in 2025, I was about to say 24, we've just hit February, we see that there is a rapid expansion in online learning, virtual learning, even with what is happening with AI and all that tech, right? But despite these advances, one of the criticisms that we have often heard about L&D is that we are more of order takers. And so the concern is that we may not have much to offer in terms of conversations, with C-suite executives. We may not have much to offer in terms of the overall company's vision and mission. And that's what we're looking to change. And that's why I decided to call the presentation L&D 2.0, because in truth and in fact, is really looking at how we can move from that image or that way of being seen as a very critical function in any organization to one that is able to contribute a lot more with regards to the interventions that we design, and not just the interventions, but also the kind of information that we have access to once we design these interventions and we implement them. All right. Any questions so far, guys? No, we're good. Hi, Brenda. Do you have a question? Good so far? If you're following, guys, let me know. Just put a thumbs up in the chat. Okay, she's good. All right. And so I'm hoping that you were able to see. It looks a little bit small to me, guys, but okay. Kelly says she's good. All right. Thank you for you guys are still here. That's great. All right. So we want to start out with a little bit of a definition in terms of learning analytics, right? And I'm using some notes here, guys, because it looks a little bit small from what I can see. But I wanted to share a quote with you from Derek Mitchell. I have had a conversation with him. He is the Senior Analytics Partner for Global People Analytics with Novo. We had a very interesting conversation with regards to L&D analytics and how that can really revolutionize what we do as learning and development professionals. And one of the definitions I came up with is that L&D analytics could be defined as any workplace data science which uses predictive and prescriptive analytics and machine learning to help us make predictions and decisions. But where the gap that we've seen is really with regards to the making of predictions, right? We're often very good at interpreting the learner data that we get from, LMSs or however else we gather that data. But once we move into a more predictive role is what we're looking to do with regards to analytics, right? Using that data to make more predictions or using that data. Okay, that's cool, Raymond. He says, what a coincidence. I've just applied for an L&D role at Novo. Great. Wishing you all the best with that. Right. And so what Derek shared with regards to that, which I think is crucial, he says when it comes to analytics in L&D, he says learner data is the least important. And this is why he says that. He says he believes that what should be measured is who is taking the course and how that is impacting their work performance. And I want you to think about that for a little bit, because in truth and in fact, if we say that the interventions that we're designing is supposed to improve performance, and make our employees better at what they do, then what he is suggesting is really not that far-fetched, right? I know that we are very good at looking at things like learner completion, how many persons did the course, how many persons completed the course. But when you think about that, that really does not give us much insight into how the course helped them in the execution of their tasks and their duties. We just know that they completed, right? And they did what they were supposed to do. Similarly, if we look at, for example, how many persons took the course, again, those numbers in and of themselves does not really give us much as learning and development professionals to know exactly how impactful our interventions are, right? And that's where we really want to get to. We want to get to being able to identifying how impactful our interventions are, so that when those conversations are being had, we are able to contribute in a valuable way. And, whereas we were worried about cuts being in L&D first, then things like that would not necessarily be at the forefront of our minds, right? I'll see what I can do, Raymond. I'll see what I can do. And so learning analytics really is a kind of data-driven approach to learning that can help your company answer some pretty complex questions. And I'm going to give you some examples of what that might look like, right? So from a financial analysis point of view, if you gather the right learning data, you may be able to answer a question such as, how have your trainings affected overall business revenue, right? So for the number of interventions you created, how did that impact the company's bottom line? Also from an HR perspective, it may also help us to understand what is the rate of employee turnover in relations to the trainings that were completed. So remember I said earlier, we tend to look at learner completion, but that in and of itself does not tell enough of a story for us to decide how valuable that intervention was. And that's one of the reasons why we want to put into practice the habit of going a little bit deeper, so that we're able to better defend the value that we provide. We know intrinsically that we provide values to organizations. Sometimes it's not necessarily the L&D professional that needs convincing, but it's more so our partners, our business partners, and those that we work with, those that we serve, that would want us to be able to answer those questions in a clearer, more number driven manner, if we can say that. And lastly, it may also be able to help you to answer a question such as, which employees require more support, right? So again, one of the things I did in my role that helped me to be able to start looking at the numbers, and this is where partnerships come in very handy. Because even though I was the learning and development manager at the site, I also had to have relationships with the operations lead. I had to have relationships with my HR person. I had to have relationships with just a number of persons across the organization. And what that did was that actually put me in a position to get access to the information that I needed. And I'm just sharing with you a graphical representation of a research that was done. It was done in 2000 and let me check that for you. It was done in 2016, right? And what we're looking at is the comparison between those companies that did apply a more analytic look at L&D as opposed to those who didn't. And what you're seeing in orange are those companies that did implement a more analytic approach to L&D, and those in gray did not. And just from a quick glance, you can see there that those who did were able to outperform those who did not. And so there are certain industries that have been very good at using L&D analytics over the years, just to power not just advancements in their technology or advancements in the kind of interventions that they offer, but also overall business performance for the company, right? Making the impact where it really matters, which is that bottom line, which they tend to look at the end of the year, right? And so this research really revealed the effectiveness of using HR and learning analytics, and it found that 81 of the respondents said that at least one of their learning analytics project had a positive impact on the business. All right, and so again, once you start looking a little bit deeper at the numbers, working closely with the partners and trying to get that data, even if you don't have a learning management system, we're going to get in the tools in just a bit, but they would have the data available in some form. I usually get performance data directly from my operations lead. And so, for example, in the case where we were responsible for monitoring new hires when they got into the organization from day 1 right up through to day 90, if we wanted to know how our new hire training really impacted that group, we started as a training team to track their performance. So week over week, we would be in constant conversation with the supervisors or the team leads, and we would specifically ask them to send us the performance data for the group that just came out of training. And we would be able to track that, and as they went through, we would be able to then compare that data, say for example for a wave 1 versus a wave 2, and that would really give us an idea as to how our trainings were doing in terms of readiness, providing readiness for new hires once they leave training and they go into operations. How ready were they to start performing well? And we were able to get some pretty insightful data that way. We were able to tweak, make changes where necessary. Some modules needed to be updated and changed because of the feedback that we were getting. So again, if we were just focusing solely on, okay, we had X number of persons that came in, X number completed the training, and they're now in production, but we're not really following up to see, okay, how impactful was the training outside of, the usual form that the usual, what am I looking for, survey that we do to ask them how was their training experience, but really to see how impactful that information is that we were delivering to them to get them prepared to go and do a good job. Any questions, concerns, suggestions, feedback so far, guys? Anything that you need clarified? Let me know. If you're good, just go ahead and put a thumbs up in the chat. Let me know that you're tracking with me. Not seeing those thumbs up, guys. Are we here? All right. I need you to stay with me, guys. Stay with me. Don't fall asleep on me, okay? And if you haven't, Raymond says all good, yes. All right. So I'm sharing with you a business example. And I hope that you guys can see it clearly because I'm using another system here just to make sure. It looks very small to me here. Jennifer says 2 thumbs up. All right, great. So essentially in this particular business example, what we're trying to share is that the data trends don't necessarily always require any kind of complex analysis, right? We're not, I guess we could say that we're not asking people to become analytics experts, right? But with just a basic understanding and just access to a few numbers, you would be able to make certain conclusions or make certain predictions based on what you're seeing, right? So for example, with this particular business example that we're looking at, it was with a global bank what they needed to do is they needed to improve the branch performance, especially because they were going through a digital transformation, and the change would be across the region for that particular group. So the CEO wanted to see if employee engagement results could highlight any opportunities such as inconsistent branch unit performance, whether they were having some outliers, high-performing branches with both high performance and engagement. So that was the business problem that they were trying to solve, right? This is what they did. They reviewed the branch unit performance and engagement data. They identified that there were 5 high-performing units out of 19 that were across the region, right? And so their team developed a 2-day mentoring program for 5 managers. And they mentored the other managers to support them in the behavioral change as well as performance improvements based on their experiences. And this is what the results were. So essentially, they saw sales results collectively improved by 8.9% across the other 14 units, and they share the monetary value of that. Also, they saw that the customer satisfaction increased by at least 4.8% across those units, and they had overall a 1,400% ROI on the L&D intervention. Some of the other findings were that 4 of the 5 senior managers or mentor managers became area managers due to the demonstration of their performance and the change management capabilities. So again, because of the problem that they were experiencing, right, if we look closely, we'll see that the question that the CEO wanted answered, learning data in and of itself would not necessarily be sufficient to be able to give him all the answers that he was seeking. And so in creating that intervention, they had to use a different approach, and they also had to look a little bit more at the performance numbers, not necessarily just the learner numbers, but also how the team was performing to be able to design that kind of intervention that was able to make that much of an impact. Questions? Concerns? Suggestions? If not, we're just going to move right ahead. And so these are the tips that I would love to leave with you today for creating what I would like to call a data-driven culture, which can be a little bit of a challenge in and of itself, depending on how, yes, Raymond, very interesting. Depending on how you view your role, right? And I know it's different for each person here. You've all had different experiences within your different organizations. I have had conversations with L&D professionals before, and they'll say things like, it's not that easy. In my company, they really don't take feedback. So there can be a myriad of reasons, that would see us not really being willing to put ourselves out there as change leaders. Let's say that, right? But one of the things that I have found work very well for me was trying to understand, and that's point number 1, where I say adopt a commercial mindset. And the question is, how does the company make money? So I naturally have a curious mind. And so I also want to challenge us here. Sometimes L&D can be seen as, okay, fine, we're not necessarily so interested in, the sales or whatever else metrics may be going on for that company. But I really want to challenge us to start looking at the way your company earns, what moves those numbers on a quarterly basis, what moves those numbers on a yearly basis. And once you start looking at that, then you can start looking at the other data that may be available to you. So the data, the metrics, and analytics capability in terms of what data currently exists in your organization. You can get people data, business data, or even external data. For me, I worked primarily with the data that we collected as a training department. And as I shared earlier, because I also developed relationships with our ops lead, the leads in HR, then I would also ask them to share some of their data with me, especially as it related to our new hires that we were responsible for tracking for those 90 days, and not just that they completed training, but also how well they were doing in their different functions, right? And lastly, become an advocate. In truth and in fact, we probably need to improve how we brag. And I say that quite humbly. A lot of the personalities in L&D, and forgive me if I'm saying this just out of assumptions, but a lot of persons in L&D tend to have more inward turn personalities. Some may even say that they're introverts, and so the idea is we are not necessarily very good at advocating or batting for ourselves, and we have to become the advocate in our companies for what we do. We have to be the first ones out there to help people to understand what we do and why that's important. And that is why going further than just learner data is one of the ways in which we're going to overcome some of the resistance that we may encounter with regards to people believing how valuable learning and development is, right? And just to share with you some ways that you can get some of that data. We already know that there are LMS systems, especially now with, very good. Raymond says, use storytelling to celebrate victories, L&D success stories. I love that, right? Yeah, so we have to get very good at sharing our own story in a way that's going to make people sit up and listen. Max here is saying, even though results are the most important, he says, don't skip out on providing the data that lead up to those data. Very good. And so yes, thank you so much for sharing, Max and Raymond. Appreciate that. Definitely on point. So we know we can get the information from LMSs and HR systems. I don't know exactly what your work environment looks like. I have been in situations, though, where companies are not necessarily using LMSs, right? And they may or may not be using HR systems. And so to put your hands on, to get your hands on that data may be a little bit more, difficult. And you may have to rely more so on relationships, right? Meaning you may have to really reach out to your HR person and say, whatever you have, even if you don't have a HR system, but you should have some data on, how many people came in, what's the turnover, that kind of a thing that you can share, similar with the operations team, right? And keep those suggestions coming, guys. And so that's really it for me, guys. That's all I had to share. I hope you found it useful, and I'm open for questions for anyone who may have a question, a suggestion, a concern. I just want to thank you in advance for listening. Oh, let me just jump back. Let me jump back real quick. Questions, concerns, suggestions. And we're open to taking them, guys. And I think with that, I stuck within the required time frame, right? Okay, he said the last slide. Tell me which one, Danielle, which one? The references or the analytics and tools? Max says, don't forget the humble t-test and Excel that might help you make analysis of the data with quite simple tools. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. References. Okay, let me jump back. Ooh, I'm sorry, guys. There you go. Brenda says, what are your suggestions for a startup that do not have much, if any, data? All right, Brenda. And when you say not much, if any, can you give me an example of what you might have access to, even as a startup? I'm currently working with a startup right now, and they are able to, you're welcome, Danielle, they are able to share at least employee performance data and data with regards to the number of persons that they hire and how long those people stay on. You're welcome, Jennifer. So Brenda, because if you're not able to get anything at all, I see where that is going to be extremely difficult. But in that startup situation, okay, she says they have new hire info, retention, but not much else. And by new hire, do you also mean performance data? Do you at least have access to performance data? I'm sorry, guys, I'm trying to get to Brenda's. Not a lot, but some. So what I would suggest in this case, Brenda, is just starting with what you do have access to. That retention data in and of itself may help you if you contrast that with the performance data that you have access to, and also the new hire info. So you can look at how many they're hiring on a quarterly basis, how many of that number are actually staying, and then if you are able to get the performance numbers for those groups, you can kind of look at that as well and see if there's a story there. Hopefully that helped. You're welcome. Go ahead. No. So I don't work in Excel all the time. You're welcome, Stacy. What I use, we do have LMSs, and the LMS that we use, it does have AI capabilities, right? So that gets even easier. So I can actually go in and pull numbers with regards to the number of persons we've had for this particular course, what are the pass rates for that course. So anything regarding the learning data for that group. However, because I do not necessarily work with operations, to get that performance data, I would have to reach out to a member of the operations team. And usually they do have like a CRM platform, and they can see what their employees are doing on a quarterly by quarterly basis. So if I want that data specific to a particular group, I would just ask them to send that over to me, and then I contrast it with what I have. So thankfully for us, we're not necessarily in a situation where we're starting from scratch with Excel sheets, right? And some companies may not be able to invest in the LMS, and they may have Excel sheets, and you may have to work with that. But usually that's not the case. And so I usually am able to, do some pretty awesome stuff with just that. What I get from the operations team and what I am able to access from the LMS. Trudy is asking if I have any recommendations. Oh boy, LMSs are... I'll tell you what I'm familiar with. I'm familiar with Blackboard. I am familiar with the one by Adobe. I can't remember right now. And there's another one I can't remember right now. But I think for LMSs, the only recommendation that I would make is just make sure that whatever LMS you are considering, that you are able to get data besides just your normal course completion data, that you are able to track maybe engagement rates, that kind of a thing. Okay, someone says their company's in the process of migrating onto Euricos. I've never heard of that one. And she says that's going well. Oh, that's great. Thank you, LaTanya. Adobe Captivate. So I'm very familiar with those. They have managed to build them out pretty well so far, and you can get access to some very good reports. Okay. And someone is making a suggestion here, Data and Analytics for Instructional Designers by Megan Torrance. Thank you so much, guys. Appreciate it. Yeah, so that would be my recommendation there. Hopefully that was helpful. Yes, sure. In terms of just the learner data, Louis, just what we can get from, sure. I think if we look at even if we look at just the completion rates, that would help to tell a story to stakeholders. But I also believe that if you tie that back in with another number, so not just the, because okay, so say for example the company decides that they want to go ahead and roll out a sales refresher training, right? Because they recognize that the sales staff hasn't been doing so well, and they say, okay, fine, let's look at, see, of course we're going to do that analysis, but say we roll out the training, right, and we put it in the LMS, and we have all those that were identified as struggling take the course. Of course, if we show that the training itself was done because we had all those, people who needed help, they actually took the course, they completed the course, and they passed, right? That in and of itself can speak to stakeholders. But I think as a learning and development person, you can get more bang for your buck, if I can say that, by not just looking at the fact that they completed the course, but also asking the operations team to say, hey, these guys that did the sales training last month, can you show me what their sales rate is at right now? You see what I'm saying? So when you look at the course completion and whether there's an uptick in that number is really where you would get that question answered, because people would say you don't want to do correlational, but it would be an easier sell to say, hey, they all completed the training, they all did well, nobody failed. And then when you look across at the performance aspect of it, you're seeing that they're actually improving in the sales performance as opposed to the prior state that they were coming from, which is where they weren't doing so well. So that's why I believe that combining would give you a better presentation of value, let's say that, as opposed to just that one number in and of itself, if that makes sense. I don't. I don't actually. I don't. I don't use it to generate. I think because the LMS has the AI incorporated, and I can just run in and pull a report. For that reason, I don't necessarily rely on the AI outside of what I have access to. And thank you for the LMS. Yes, thank you for the LMS suggestions, guys. I've never heard of that one either. That's interesting, right? And they said that one is Microsoft. Max is saying, and a t-test possibly to do in Excel can prove that there is a significant difference in results. I can tell Max is an Excel person. I don't know about you. I did say, didn't I share earlier, guys? I said one of the reservations I had before I started looking at numbers was that it's that my brain was saying once it involved Excel and it involved numbers, I was not going near it. Right. But I had to get over that. And so thankfully, because of AI and LMSs that do incorporate it, I don't necessarily have to rely so heavily on Excel, but it's still great to know in the event that it's needed. No, that's fine. Thank you so much for having me, guys. If you want to reach out to me, I'm on LinkedIn. I don't know how well that is projecting for you guys right now. It looks very small to me. But I'm on LinkedIn as Tamika Stewart. If you search, you'll find me. And if you have any other questions or anything else, you can feel free to just send me a message on LinkedIn. I'm usually very good with responding if I'm not extremely busy. But thank you so much for having me, guys, and I hope you found this session useful.